percent increase and decrease. Okay, this is a topic, percent increase and percent decrease, or percent change in general, that tends to confuse a lot of people. So we're going to go through it over, I believe, a series of 3 videos, and hopefully, kind of boil it down a little bit, get down to the basics of it, and hopefully make it make sense for you as we move forward. In this first video, part 1, our objective is going to be, we want to find the amount of increase or decrease in percentage problems. Okay, so find the amount. All right, so I've written some things down here. I want to kind of recap a little about what some of this is all about, what some of this means. Okay, I'll make sure I get my notes up here. Okay, when we're working with percent change, as I said before, percent increase or percent decrease, when we're working with percent change problems, we're dealing with a new amount and a beginning amount. We have a change, so we either have a beginning amount that either goes up to a new amount, an increase, or a beginning amount that goes down to a new amount, the decrease. So when the new amount is larger than the beginning amount, we have an increase. When the new amount is smaller than the beginning amount, we have a decrease in the amount. Okay, so to find that, let me make sure my paper is looking good. Okay, to find that amount of increase or decrease, okay, we're simply going to subtract. So when we have an increase, those are the situations in which the new amount is larger than the beginning amount. The amount of the increase is the new amount minus the beginning amount. Okay, when we're looking for an amount of decrease, those are situations in which the new amount is smaller than the beginning amount. And so we're looking at an amount decrease, which is the beginning amount because it's the larger, minus the new amount. Okay, so that's just a fair number of words and things that probably make sense to most of you, but I want to call back on these things as we move forward. I have a fair amount of space on my paper, but I'm going to turn it over because I'm going to use a bit more space to show an example. Okay, so here's my example. We have a coat. It was marked down from $98 to $79. And the question is, what is the amount of markdown? Okay, well, we have a beginning amount. The beginning amount is $98. We have a new amount. The new amount is $79. And I noted the new amount is smaller, so we have a decrease because I went from a higher number to a lower number. I have a decrease. And my decrease, of course, is the beginning amount minus the new amount. And my decrease, $98 minus $79, I have a decrease of $19. Okay, so I can say the coat was marked down $19, because that was the question. What is the amount of markdown? Well, the amount of markdown is $19. Okay, so let's give a name to what we just did there. When we're subtracting amounts, okay, what we're finding is called the absolute change. All right, and I'm going to show how that's different from percent in just a moment. So again, subtracting two amounts, be they numbers, subtracting two dollar amounts, subtracting two pound amounts, subtracting any two numbers with the same units, that's the absolute change. Now let's get into, so that kind of recaps a little bit about some things you've known. Let's talk about percent change. Okay, percent change is the amount of change, again, the increase or the decrease, but this time it is expressed as a percent, and it's a percent of the beginning amount or the original amount. which is why we stressed beginning a little bit earlier in the video. Okay, whereas the absolute change is when you subtract the amounts. The percent change is called the relative change. Okay, and what it does is this expresses the absolute change as a percentage. So the absolute change, we're subtracting the amounts. The percent change is expressing this difference, this absolute change, as a percent. Okay, so let's talk about how we find the amount of change from a percent of change. Okay, so to find the amount of change, increase or decrease, from a percent of change, what we do is the amount of change is the percent of change written as a decimal, because whenever we do math with percents, if we don't include the number 100, we have to write it as a decimal, times the beginning amount. Amount of change, percent of change times beginning amount. Okay, so again, I understand a lot of words. Seems rather simple. You need to kind of understand the words. I think what'll make a bigger difference is if I show you a couple examples, and that might tie it together. But what matters mostly at this point is absolute change. We're just subtracting the numbers. We have a beginning amount and a new amount. Percent change is the absolute change expressed as a percentage, and we can calculate the amount of change using the percent of change times the beginning amount. Those are the three big things we've gotten into so far. We'll take a look at two examples, and then we'll close up. We'll kind of wrap up this video. Okay, the first example. Okay, so remember, our objective here is find the amount of increase or decrease in percentage problems. How much increase or decrease are we talking about? In our second example, we have an employee who's making $21.35 an hour, and this employee receives a 5% wage increase. Okay, so this employee, maybe the employee's been there for 6 months, and after 6 months, the company or the manager says, you get a 5% pay increase. Okay, what is the amount of increase per hour to the nearest cent, and what is the new hourly wage? Okay, so find the amount, in this case, of increase. Okay, well, we know we need amount of increase, the amount of change, and I'll abbreviate amount with AMT. Okay, find the amount of change. In this case, it's an increase. Okay, and again, we're dealing with the amount of change. What we're dealing with here is an increase, and that is equal to the percent of change, which is 5%, times the beginning amount. The beginning amount is $21.35. So this says, the first question, what is the amount of increase per hour to the nearest cent? Well, the amount of change, or the amount of increase in this case, is the percent of change. It went up by 5%, times the original amount or the beginning amount. As I mentioned, whenever you do multiplication with a percent, unless you include the number 100, you need to write it as its decimal. 5% is 0.05. Remember, the percent sign can be replaced by dividing by 100, and that moves the decimal 2 places to the left. And we'll do 0.05 times $21.35. I'm going to use my calculator. Give me a moment here. So 0.05 times 21.35, and I come up with $1.07 when I round to the nearest cent. $1.07. Okay, so the amount of increase to the nearest cent is $1.07. Okay, what is the new hourly wage? Well, this was an increase, so the new wage equals the original, or the beginning wage, okay, plus the amount of change. And again, we're using plus here because it's an increase. So we're adding the amount of change on. So we started off with $21.35 as the hourly wage. The amount of change was $1.07, so we're going to add on $1.07. And I think I can do that in my head. $21.35 plus $1.07, well, that's going to be $22.42. So there's your new wage. Okay, so we just found the amount of increase or decrease in a percent problem. That was our objective. We have a percent problem. It was an increase, and we just used what we knew to come up with the solution, both the new amount, the amount of the increase or the amount of the change, and in this case, the new wage or the new hourly wage. Okay, let's look at a decrease. This will be our last example. Okay, let me get it up there for you. We have a product that shrinks in volume, and it shrinks in volume 0.6% during a cooling process. Generally, when things cool down, they tend to shrink a little bit. How much remains when a product that has a volume of 38 cubic centimeters is cooled? Okay, well, let's take a look at our amount of change. And in this case, our change is a decrease. Okay, well, our amount of change is the percent. Okay, 0.06%. Okay. The percent of change, it changes by 0.6% times the original or the beginning amount. Well, we started out with 38 cubic centimeters. Okay, as I said before, we're going to do multiplication, so we're going to change this to its decimal form. This is 0.006. 0.6% is equal to 6 thousandths as a decimal. I'm going to multiply that by 38, and I'm going to go over here to my calculator and do that math. And I come up with 0.228. So the amount of change is 0.228 cubic centimeters. Not much change, but it's less than 1%, so it shouldn't be too much. Okay? Well, that wasn't the question. We had to find that to answer the question, but the question wasn't what was the amount of change. The question was how much remains. Okay, so we have to subtract that off. So the remainder is equal to the original amount, R-I-G-I-N, I'm trying to spell it here, the original or the beginning amount. And again, I'm going to abbreviate amount, AMT. Because it was a decrease, we're going to subtract the amount of change because we had a decrease. So we're going to subtract, whoops, I could just subtract like I did above. We're going to subtract the amount of change. Our original amount, our beginning amount was 38 cubic centimeters. We're going to subtract, because we have a decrease, we lose, it shrinks with decreases. We're going to subtract 0.228 or 228 thousandths of a cubic centimeter. And this is going to require my calculator again. Let's see here, 38 minus 0.228. And so the remainder, what's left over, how much is left over, how much remains up here, is 37.772 cubic centimeters. Okay, so brief recap. We've been focusing on using percent problems to find, finding the amount of increase or decrease in percent problems. And we've talked about how to find that increase. We talked about the percent times the original. The percent times the original gives us the amount of change. And then we either need to add that or subtract that, depending upon whether or not it was an increase in amount or a decrease in amount.